Hello, pattern readers. What do I have for you today? Not much. How about just some Lan Mandragoran? That's right. Whether you've watched this 6-second clip 50 or 100 times already or not, like I have, we're going to watch it again. And then I have more news and land-related topics to dig into. So let's go.
You think you know this world? You know nothing. You think you know this world? You know nothing.
First of all, I have to say, this was the teaser that probably had me fangirling the most. Others might have given us more to speculate about, but this one just looks perfect. I was excited before to see Daniel Henney as Lan, but seeing all the pieces come together, even for just an instant, the voice, the stone-faced expression, the costume, the hair, he just is Lan to me now, and I can't wait for more. I was also fangirling over some of these cast interactions because I just love to see the relationships developing. Rosamund Pike responding to Rafe Judkins' post with, "You can see why I bonded him." Yes, we can, Maureen, said I. And she also responded to Daniel Henney with, "This lady couldn't wish for a better warder." And he responds, "At your side, my dear," which is just making my heart burst, to be quite honest. But of course, we have to break this teaser down further. And before I get too far, let's just say there will be mild book spoilers and potential show spoilers for the first book and season. So use your own judgment here. Let's talk about the costume and the weapons first. Because yes, it does appear that Lan is wearing his scabbard on his back and that he has a second weapon, possibly a short sword used for blocking as well. There's a longer and interesting discussion to be had about how realistic it is to carry a sword in that position, but in brief, it is more difficult to draw, especially a long sword, though it might be advantageous for concealment of a weapon if one didn't expect to use it, or for long travel. It becomes more viable to draw it if not in a full scabbard, which normally would be a problem for its lack of protection of the blade. But Lan's sword is power-forged and doesn't actually need protection from the elements. The second weapon, which is likely being carried at the hip here, might have prompted this particular design choice. And until we see more, it might be difficult to say, but Rafe Judkins has also mentioned different fighting styles that have been developed for different cultures in the show, and that might be a factor as well. The costume choice seems very utilitarian, but with an Eastern aesthetic, which is fitting for how Borderlands cultures are described. We see the Hidori, of course, and even the hairstyle I love because it keeps Lan's longer hair as described, but makes it really practical, shows off the Hidori, and is likely to be distinct from a Shinaran top knot style, which might look something like this. Plus, we can call it a Lan bun. If you're interested in more on the possible inspiration for the costume, check out this video from Wheel of Time Theory. In case anyone is freaking out that we don't see the warder cloak in this shot, I just want to say that I think it's very unlikely that Lan or any warder character will wear the cloak in most of the shots. I think to do the color shifting cloak right is probably going to involve some CGI. In fact, the one idea I can come up with is to use green screen cloth to accomplish this. And in that case, they're not going to want to do the effects in every shot they have of Lan. But I think patience will pay off. I have no doubt that we will see the cloaks in the show and that they'll look cool. Now let's focus on the scene itself for a moment. What jumps out, of course, is what looks to be fire in the background, which immediately calls back to two previous reveals we have gotten. The Moiraine clip, and the concept art for Emond's Field with the festival lanterns. I saw some tweets also pointing out the lighting similarity between the two clips, like these two from booktuber Rhythma and Andrew from Black Tower Podcast. So I feel very strongly that the Moiraine clip, as well as this one, take place in the first episode, during the nighttime Trolloc attack on Emond's Field, interrupting their festival, which means that Lan is very likely fighting a Trolloc here, which we can just barely see in silhouette. Lastly, we have the line itself, which, like previous clips we've gotten, almost certainly does not appear with the scene we are seeing. It's either recorded specifically for the teaser or trailer, like the Moiraine clip was, or it's a line Lan says at some other point in the show. If it's that latter possibility, he could be talking to any or all of the Emond's Field characters, or maybe he's talking to Moiraine if it's a flashback to when they first met. But we actually have a clue as to which of these it might be. This is going back to a Nynaeve Audition tape, which was leaked all the way back in October 2019. There's a scene between Nynaeve and Lan where she seems to have tracked him and found Lan with a wounded Moiraine, and they have been separated from Nynaeve's friends. Lan says to Nynaeve, quote, "You think you know this world, but you know nothing, girl." Now, big caveats here. Audition scripts often do not make it unchanged into the final script. They might even deliberately write something different for it in case it leaks, like this one did. The scenario we see here makes it seem as if this is the first time Nynaeve has caught up to the group, and it's when Lan and Moiraine have become separated from the rest of the Emond's fielders, presumably after Shadar Logoth. I find it very hard to believe that Nynaeve would not be with the group at all until that point. It would mean we get very little of her interacting with the other Emond's fielders. Plus, we have this concept art, which, as I've previously discussed, most likely depicts the group heading into Shadar Logoth, and it includes Nynaeve. One possibility is that this scene like this could occur in the third episode after Shadar Logoth, and it's when Nynaeve finds Lan and Moiraine again after becoming separated. With some little tweaks in the dialogue, it could be quite fitting in that place, and then it's essentially what happens in the books. Nynaeve was with the group before. She's become separated from them. She finds Lan again as opposed to for the first time. Somewhat unrelated, but there's a second scene between Nynaeve and Moiraine, and it seems to be the first time they're meeting in Emond's Field, and Moiraine is questioning Nynaeve about some details like her history and her age, perhaps suggesting that she might be trying to figure out if Nynaeve is the person she has come to Emond's Field to find. It also reveals that Nynaeve is an orphan who was raised by a wisdom, and that she resents the Aes Sedai for turning away the wisdom because she was a ragged girl from a small town. Also noteworthy is that this wisdom was 13 years old when she realized she could channel, which is younger than the typical age of first channeling for girls in the books, but fits right in with this young swan being the right age to play a novice in the White Tower. Check out the link to the scripts on WoTseries.com to read all of the text. The other exciting news we got this week was from Deadline, which is reporting that not only is the production currently shooting to finish up the first season, but that they will commence shooting the second season immediately after. This is super exciting news. I was honestly expecting this, but it's great to have confirmation. We had seen from some recent social media posts that cast members Rosamund Pike, Daniel Henney, Yosha Stradowski, and Madeline Madden were back shooting in Prague. And we knew from previous reporting that there were plans to finish up season 1 in the spring. And it just made sense, given the delays from the pandemic, to go right into shooting season 2 if possible. Writing for season 2 began all the way back in November 2019, so they've had plenty of time to get ready for this. This news really shows further confidence in the production to keep going, even before the first premiere date has been announced. Speaking of which, it is noteworthy that the handles for the social media accounts for the show recently changed to @TheWheel of Time as opposed to What on Prime. This to me is an indication that they soon expect to be doing more marketing broadly as opposed to primarily to existing book fans as they've been doing up until now. I'm pretty sure this means we're drawing closer to a trailer and a release date announcement. The main accounts for Prime Video have also started sharing these recent clips of Rosamund Pike and Daniel Henney in character. So we all need to gird our loins and get prepared for this. And while we are girding our loins, it would be just wrong of me to finish this video without doing some discussion of how to adapt Lan. If you've been following my channel recently, you'll know that I've been featuring different topics and characters from the Wheel of Time to discuss how they need to be adapted to work well on screen. I've covered Moiraine and all of the major romantic relationships, so check out those videos if you haven't already. So let's talk about what is essential Lan. What does the show need to incorporate from the books in order to capture the essence of the character? For the remainder of the video, I'm going to spoiler tag in sections. So if you're worried about spoilers for later books, hover over the progress bar so you can check the sections and see which are safe for you. To me, Essential Lan centers around his oaths and how they can put him in conflict with himself. As an infant, his parents gifted him his sword and swore the ancient Valkyrie oath of kings in his name, to stand against the shadow so long as iron is hard and stone abides, to defend the Valkyrie while one drop of blood remains, to avenge what cannot be defended. And he has taken this oath to heart, and to mean that he is dedicating his life to fighting the forces of the Dark One. And he believes this fight will eventually claim his life. If we go back to New Spring, when Lan first met Moiraine, she was successfully able to convince him that his oath aligned with her mission to find and protect the Dragon Reborn. And that led him to make his oath to her, to be her warder and point his sword wherever she said. But a part of him still longs for the Blight and to direct his fight there. So that's conflict number one. Conflict number two is that he has never been willing to lead other men to their deaths, much as he is willing to go to his own. So he's never claimed the crown of Malkyr for this reason. Conflict number three comes in when he meets the Emond's Fielders, because his heart becomes Nynaeve's, and yet he will not pledge himself to her. Partially because he believes he will not live long and does not want her to grieve for him, and partially because of his bond to Moiraine. But his heart yearns for her still. And that openness that she creates in him ends up extending to the other Emond's Fielders, especially Rand, to the point where Lan wants to help Rand himself and doesn't necessarily let himself be guided by Moiraine and what she thinks is best for Rand. There also should be a sense of Lan being an onion, as Rand describes him. Despite his stone-faced exterior, we get glimpses of layers underneath. His penchant for poetry, his flashes of sense of humor, these are some of his best moments because they're so unexpected. He's a passionate man who hardly ever lets that show. On the surface, he's just deadly, a fighter with hardly an equal. Daniel Henney should be given opportunities to display these characteristics, and the show absolutely needs to incorporate those relevant bits of history and focus on those key relationships. Now let's talk about what might need to change or be added to bring Lan to life on screen. The most straightforward and obvious change in an adaptation like this is that, of course, there are going to be some scenes added that we didn't get to see in the books because of things being only in certain POVs. There are scenes that might have been referred to or implied, or in some cases not referenced at all, that are going to be added, such as scenes between Nynaeve and Lan, and probably Moiraine and Lan, because they want to show, not tell, and because Lan doesn't get a lot of POV chapters, relatively speaking, especially early on. It will also be interesting to see how we learn about Lan's history, both as an infant and as a young man when he first meets Moiraine. It's likely that there will be some flashbacks incorporated when appropriate, but we'll also probably have someone telling the story of Lan's history. In the book, it's Algomar telling Nynaeve and Egwene, and overheard by Rand, and they could keep it that way. But it might also be more potent to have the story being told by Moiraine or even Lan himself. There are lots of possibilities. Another change might come in after Moiraine has gone through the Redstone doorway and Lan's bond is passed to another Aes Sedai. There's already the element of lack of consent here, because Moiraine does so without Lan's permission. Then what happens afterward, where Myrelle has sex with Lan in order to try to keep his will to live after the loss of Moiraine, there's no consent there either, and it's pretty horrifying. Truth be told, this may have played some role in keeping Lan alive, but what it really comes down to is a warder needing to find some other reason to live, just like a channeler who has been severed from the source. In Lan's case, I really believe this truly has much more to do with Nynaeve than anything else. So I don't think they have to keep the sexual assault by whichever Aes Sedai holds the bonds. Maybe she even tries and he successfully resists. I think I would rather see that Lan's will to live is more tied to Nynaeve, despite his intention that she forget him. Speaking of the Aes Sedai who will temporarily hold Lan's bond, I think there's some chance, due to the show's desire to conserve characters, that the bond could be passed to Alana instead of Myrelle. I'm not sure how I feel about this change. I do understand the need to conserve characters, and Myrelle is not one who makes as much of an impression as Alana does. But they do need to have at least a few featured characters from each Aja. And this might be condensing too much into one character, given that Alana will also hold Rand's bond. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this idea. While you are at it, leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts on this latest show news and teaser. What else do you think is essential Lan? There are, of course, many key moments throughout the series that have to make it in. I didn't get into that here, but let me know some of your favorites. And are there other changes you think we might have to see for Lan? As always, like and share the video, subscribe for more Wheel of Time content, and until next time, gird your loins, my friends.